Hi, Professor Marti here. Let's look at this final plot that we're going to study today, and we're going to practice critical thinking. So let's look at what kind of chart is this. Okay, so this is a scatter plot with a fitted trend. Each dot, this is also from a UNESCO report, each dot in this chart represents a country. An x-axis is the average math achievement of female students at grade 8. And y-axis is the percentage of female teachers, and the line, it shows the association. So why would the designer actually choose this kind of a plot to communicate the data, to represent the data? Is that, okay, 1 second. So this chart tells us, so first of all, to show whether two variables tend to move together. Okay, what this chart tells us is a positive association between the percentage of female teachers and the average math achievement of female students in grade 8. That's the only claim that we can make. So this is supported because countries with more female teachers tend to also have higher average math scores for girls, and the relationship is not perfect, of course. There's a substantial scatter, but this pattern appears across multiple countries. So the careful wording would be, these two variables are related at the country level. That's it. No more, no less, that's it. These two variables are related at the country level. More importantly, let's talk a little bit about what this chart doesn't tell us. What this chart doesn't tell us is that female teachers cause higher math achievement. We have no evidence. We see the association, we don't have the causality. Whether female teachers directly influence girls' performance, we don't know. Whether higher performing systems simply employ more female teachers, what happens at the individual students or classroom level, whether this relationship is actually statistically significant, we do not know. This chart only shows correlation, okay? Correlation, not causation. And the caption is problematic here because it reads, female teachers positively affect girls' performance in mathematics. This is a causal claim, but the chart itself doesn't justify this claim. Maybe that was a research design, maybe in the report they explain the justification for that kind of a causal claim. We don't know. If you want to take a look, you can look at the UNESCO reports as I put in the description of the video, but what they say is a causal claim, what the data shows, what the chart shows is actually an association, a correlation. It doesn't justify the claim. Notice how the language of the caption is actually stronger than what the data alone can actually support. So when the claim is stronger than the design itself, than the chart itself, I encourage you to take a pause and identify, okay, what are the overclaims here? What are the common misconceptions? One potential misconception that I see all the time actually is that having more female teachers improves girls' math performance. It is of course tempting to say that because we see a positive slope. It is kind of an intuitive, consistent with the role model narrative, but it is incorrect in this context because just by looking at the chart, we don't have an experimental data, we don't have longitudinal data, we don't know if they're controlled for confounding factors, we don't know if the direction of the influence, this is unknown, we don't have a causal claim. Therefore, better phrasing for that would be the proportion of female teachers is associated with girls' math achievement, period. Another misconception would be female teachers are better at teaching girls math. This is also wrong. This is overclaim. This is beyond what the data can explain because first of all, the teaching quality is not measured. How do we know what teaching quality is actually about, right? So we're not talking about teaching quality. A subject specialization is not shown here, right? So the chart contains no information about the teacher quality. Another potential misconception is that this proves representation causes performance. It is also wrong. We may want to believe that, right? But representation may be a proxy for a deeper system problem, system feature. And high equity systems may have both hire more female teachers and support girls' achievement better. Maybe there's an underlying cause actually. Another misconception is that this implies to individual classrooms. So it is also wrong. It is wrong to conclude that, right? The sentence may not be wrong, the argument may not be wrong, but the conclusion is an overclaim. Why it is wrong? Because this is a country level average. We have 42 countries or territories in this report. Another ecological fallacy, okay? How to read this chart? First of all, identify the unit. The unit of this analysis is not students, it is actually countries, right? And then you look at the association and identify that the relationship is actually not an intervention, it is an association, okay? And then ask what is missing actually. You have the funding levels maybe would be a factor, the curriculum, the cultural norms. We're talking about 42 different countries. There could be lots of information that would actually help us explain this trend. But we don't know. We don't have to know, right? We don't, like, the chart doesn't claim that, but we should be aware that what the designer choose to communicate in this chart and what they choose not to communicate, okay? Or in this report. And to check the language, they use the term effect or the verb effect. Effect implies causality, influence, effect, causality, right? Chart supports associated with, not the causality. So they should, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been using this kind of a caption. Strong narratives often sit on weak causal foundations. So try not to use strong narratives if you don't have a backup with your data. So this chart, what we can say, shows a positive association between the proportion of female teachers and girls' mathematics achievement scores across countries, 42 countries. However, because the data are observational and aggregated, observational meaning we just observe it, we don't intervene it. There's not an experimental aspect. We don't make an intervention here. Otherwise, we would claim a causality, but we just observe it. That we're exploring it, and this is aggregated at the country level, right? So we are potentially collapsing a lot of context into this single metric. The single dot that you see there contains a lot of variation, a lot of local realities. So this chart doesn't establish that female teachers cause higher performance, and it is missing a lot of variables that may or may not serve to answer the research question, but we as critical thinkers, we must ask what it can claim and what it cannot claim. How this connects to causality information. So if you want to claim that female teachers cause better outcomes for girls, we would need a classroom level analysis, like experimental design and longitudinal data. That will be important to make the claim with the causal rigorous research design, but this is again just observation. We can only make association claims. Okay, that concludes our lesson. I want to emphasize that we learned today how to slow down, right? How to ask what a chart actually shows, and in my opinion, more importantly, what it doesn't show, and then what quietly suggests. Because charts are never just pictures, they're not just visual effects, they are communication tools, they're arguments, right? They shape how problems are defined, what feels urgent, what solutions seem obvious or not obvious. So as future professionals, leaders, decision makers, your job is to understand how to read a chart with a critical mind, because you won't always and probably never see the raw data unless you ask for it. So you'll see this encapsulated information, you'll see the interpretations, you'll see the translations, but it's important to understand what goes behind the curtain of designing a chart so you can ask the right questions so you can make an informed decision. Okay, that is the end of our video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.